Hey everyone, Merch Hunter Ricky back, and this afternoon I want to talk about all the things I loved about the One Piece live action. See, my last video came off way too negative, and I didn't realize that until well into editing the video that I was, the point of the video was to highlight the things I didn't like about it, yes, but I think I leaned a little too hard into that negativity, and since it was a video only about negativity, I got too negative. And at the risk of saying the word negative or negativity again, let's just jump into the things I loved, okay? So the first major thing that I fell in love with immediately was the way they started doing the bounties. Like when they showed Alvida's bounty across her face and she smacked it upwards, and every bounty that came after that, Buggy, Kuro, Arlong, Krieg, Mihawk, all the little bounty effects that they did were so cool. And I gotta give it to Kuro's. Kuro's had the most pizzazz and swagger when he just kind of like tilted his head a little to the side and like swiped his bounty away with his claws. Just that was perfect. And each villain had their own unique feel to this, and that's what really sold me on this season as a whole. I will get to the Straw Hats in just a moment, but let's talk about the villains really quick, because what is a hero story without a villain to knock down a peg or two, right? I loved Alvida. I think the way that she was acting kind of like high and mighty and better than everyone else, it was a really good way, instead of making her like, oh, I'm Alvida, I'm the most beautiful woman on the seas. No, they changed it to the most powerful. And that was really good. I like the way that they had her first mace that she used, the duck with the like spiky mohawk. That was awesome. It was a shame they didn't use it again for the fight scene with Luffy. She ended up using her regular Iron Mace Alvida Club, and that was cool. Nothing terrible there, but it was one of those things that I noticed immediately. I was like, whoa, I want the other one back. I like it. The way that Koby was brushing the mace and all that was fantastic. Just little details like that really helped bring this world to life, And then moving on to the next villain, Buggy. Buggy was hilarious and scary. I didn't really like the Heath Ledger vibes, I'm tired of clowns doing that at this point, but it's not the end of the world, and it did not take away from my enjoyment of Buggy whatsoever. I think Kabaji and Moji's little side interactions were cool. It made you remember as a fan, oh, hey, look, it is those guys. They aren't completely forgotten about. And it showed Buggy's kind of intimidation tactics, and the way he was, he had everyone under the big top. They were chained at the ankle, forced to clap. And, that showed his menace, his real, like, psycho killer vibes. And when Nami walked out of the big top and you just see the town completely destroyed from her visage point of view, that was very fun. I really liked the way it looked. It made me feel like, oh shit, Buggy is a true menace. Also, with his like little nose thing and everyone's making fun of his nose, I like that gag. I'm glad they brought it in, and it actually looks like that thing really is his nose and he's not wearing like a prop nose. I know that doesn't make sense what I'm trying to say, but it's his nose in the show. Like, that's really his nose. Like, they didn't make it a prop for the show, and the show didn't acknowledge that it was a prop. Like, it's actually his friggin' nose. And I can totally see where you would get self-conscious for having a big circular nose like that, right? And his like sleeping ball or whatever he used to make them fall asleep, I thought that was a very clever use in tandem with his devil fruit. That's something I harp about a lot on this channel, is devil fruit powers in tandem with weaponry makes for a crazy fighter. As you could see, he tapped on Luffy's shoulder and squeezed the ball and knocked Luffy clean out and put him in the tank right after that. Like, that was awesome. Like, top tier menacing, And they had Boodle and Choo Choo at the end, and that was really sweet, very endearing, and it was a perfect way to show what it's like when the Straw Hats are going to be leaving these islands. It's going to be a quick goodbye. Everyone will be surrounded, and everyone's going to, thanks for saving us. And Luffy's going to say, yeah, no worries, keep your goods, except give me that meat right there. And all right, I'll see you guys later. Have a good one. And I thought that was a very good way of showing what it's like at the end of the day to be a Straw Hat, having just defeated a villain, right? Moving on after that, we have Kuro. And Kuro was amazing. my favorite villain of the series was Kuro. I know Arlong was awesome, but I feel like he wasn't given nearly enough screen time as Kuro. And I could be wrong there, you know, I could be a little bit biased, but I really like Syrup Village, and I always have. It is the first time I ever experienced One Piece as a child. I watched the Syrup Village arc in the anime. A couple years later, I'd be introduced to the manga as a whole. And that really changed who I was for a long time. You know, it really did change me as a viewer and fan of One Piece. Syrup Village was my introduction to One Piece, so it always has a special place in my heart. And you know, I feel like Usopp was a little underwhelming, but like perfectly himself. So he didn't really take away, and he wasn't bad by any means. He did so good with what little lines, realistically, he was given, because he barely talked. For even Syrup Village, he really doesn't have many impactful and intense lines or long-winded monologues like everyone else was given a chance to have at least like a paragraph of just them talking, you know? Whereas Usopp just has a lot of throwaway lines. But what he did was steal the show when he blew up Chew, because a lot of things will be forgotten, and this is one of them, is that Luffy and Zoro are superhuman. So when they fight people, it looks easy. Same with Sanji, you know? But Usopp is just a regular guy, and watching him be like stunned at Mihawk and Zoro's duel re-emphasizes that point, that he is a regular man amongst superhuman now. And now it's freaking him out, because now he's got to contend with the likes of fishmen who can flip houses over. And what did he do? He tricked Chew into being too confident, and he blasted him with the Fire Star, just like in the manga and anime. And honestly, this one hit harder. Chew may have gotten, you know, burned alive in the manga and anime, and then, you know, knocked out with Usopp's hammer. Yeah, he uses the hammer over and over again on his head. But no, this was better. He blew him up and killed him. And listen, yeah, Ricky likes that stuff. Some good old-fashioned violence. Usopp took one to the chest. He got shot with a rum ball, or whatever Chew was spitting, right? It wasn't the most effective attack, but that's because fishmen, especially in Arlong's crew, are really strong and very confident, and the confidence was their overdoing. I mean, they didn't jump the Straw Hats like they should have. They ran up one by one and just got one and done by Sanji and Zoro the whole time, and I really appreciated that. I felt like a 90s movie watching superheroes take down a warehouse of bad guys. And, you know, let's talk about Arlong himself. Arlong was awesome. Arlong did so good at being Arlong and just capturing that cadence and tone of voice. If people didn't like the voice, I really don't know what to say to you, because I think he did as good as possible with the way that they gave him his voice lines and what he was supposed to say when and where. He really drove home the disparity of the fishmen people and the racism they suffered at the hands of humans, and how not everyone will be over that, you know? I really enjoyed the scene, like probably my favorite line in the whole season. It's gonna sound pretty brutal, but when that man was like, I have nothing against fishmen, and Arlong was like, well, I have something against humans. I was like, oh, that guy basically said, oh, don't worry, bro, I'm not racist. And Arlong said, shit, I am. And that blew me away, because remember, villains are not supposed to be likable for being a good guy. Leave that to the good guys. And that's something that Hollywood and American comic media, and sometimes in Japanese manga, have lost sight of, is that they make their villains have like a charming backstory, or, oh, he's more anti-hero than villain. Like, nah, man, make your villain kick kids in the face and spit on women's drinks and slap them afterwards. Like, make your villain as vile and deplorable and downright disgusting as possible, because it's going to feel that much better when they get taken down. I don't want to feel sorry for the villain, nor do I want to relate to a villain. I don't want to relate to a murderer, you know? I don't want to relate to a killer. I don't want to relate to a thief, like a deadly dangerous thief, not like your Nami brand style of thief, right? And even then, you know, another thing I really liked about the show is the Straw Hats. They all did really good. They all did so fantastic in their role. Sanji, you felt his passion for cooking, the way he just simply touched one of the dishes, you know what I mean? Just looking at him make that elephant tuna or bluefin tuna dish, like, you could see him like having almost real life passion into it. Because, you know, maybe the Sanji actor learned to cook for the show, but he might have come out of the show loving to cook now because he is Sanji, right? Nami, her dry lines that everyone complained about, now you know why she was dry. She is a woman dealing with having to be the slave of a fishman who murdered her mother, and she has to work to get her village back. And the show did change the way that Kokoyashi goes down a lot, and the show changes a lot of things a lot, but I liked all those changes. Usopp having to be more of a like hated village idiot in this version ended up working really well, because he wasn't like hated in the anime and manga. Sure, they bonked him on the head, but they also didn't I don't know, I felt like there was actual visceral hate for Usopp from the villagers, and that could just be because we're watching humans with human faces, emote in real life, and that changes the way things look, right? It's not always going to be goofy and happy like the manga and anime source material. And Usopp's character, I think, despite not having a lot of lines, he did really good. Usopp, Sanji, and Nami, I really enjoyed their just them as a whole. I liked Nami's standoffishness with the crew and having to break down the walls. I liked Usopp's confidence and dorky nature. He still showed the fear that Usopp has when it comes to starting fights, but Usopp stands up to fight, and that's why I love Usopp, and he did just that against Chu. Sanji did so good with the arguing with Zeph, really made it feel like that was his father figure. Their goodbye scene felt a little forced, but that's okay because they were given such a long backstory compared to everyone else, even Luffy and Zoro. And overall, Sanji did really well. I liked his kicks at the end, and the way he said Muten shot was very flashy. Now on to Luffy and Zoro. They stole the show. And I mean, they were given the most screen time, so they were naturally going to. When Zoro cut Mr. 7 in half, I knew that this was something special. I really, really thought that was something crazy. I mean, Zoro racked up more bodies than I think the total amount of people dead in One Piece in 2 episodes, right? He was a monster and a true menace, and he really held down that sarcastic, monotone, I'm not impressed by much Zoro. And when he smiled, all he did was smirk. He didn't laugh out loud like everyone else. All of it made for a very enjoyable character. And Luffy, let me tell you, Luffy did so good. He was so fun. Watching him just be Luffy, one of my favorite characters ever in all of media brought to life, was just something fantastic. Iñaki really captured that I don't really have any cares in the world. However, I will listen to your sob story, and I will listen to your dream, because I will take that seriously. And I might not look serious right now, but I will be serious when it counts. He really mastered that very complex nature that is Luffy, because people say Luffy's a dummy, an idiot, he's too simple. Luffy is actually quite complex. It's just that his wants and needs are simple. He wants to be the Pirate King. He needs meat. That's it. You know what I mean? He needs his crew. He wants to eat. Stuff like that. But when you get down to the complex nature of Luffy, it's does he really just fall asleep when someone says a backstory or a tragic, anything? No, it's he intentionally chooses not to listen to something that might change his judgment of you. And the live action Luffy captured that so well. People were complaining too that he didn't use his powers enough, but go ahead and check out the source material, please, because he might stretch a little bit more, but I guarantee you he's not stretching every panel like people think that he is. In certain fights in the manga and anime, he's actually not stretching at all. He's just bonking people with his fists and kicking them with his feet. He's not really always using his powers the way that people were complaining they wanted him to be. And I think every case of power usage in the show looked good. All his stretching, his inflating, that's honestly my favorite actual scene, was Garp throwing the cannonball and Luffy just doing Gum Gum Balloon and just boop, that cannonball right back over there. That was awesome, and I really enjoyed it. And even him fighting Arlong, I thought that was an insane scene. I was a little sad the sword wasn't used a little bit more and Arlong didn't chop his way up the building, but it's not a problem, right? Luffy broke the sword, and they brought it, that house literally brought it down. That fight was phenomenal. I'm not gonna lie, I wasn't the biggest fan of Zoro and Sanji versus Karubi. I think it looked a little cheesy, and not because the way Karubi flew back, like a lot of people were complaining about, because that's believable if they're already superhuman, right? What I didn't like is that Zoro and Sanji didn't just absolutely eviscerate him 2-on-1. And I know that's a very specific nitpick, but that's just how I felt, you know? Back to the villains and the way that most of them were portrayed. At first I wasn't a fan of Sham and Bucci being so relevant, but Bucci specifically made me laugh almost every time he spoke, and his facial expressions were really good. And when he came out in his ludicrous pirate getup, I didn't just laugh, but I also liked it, and I thought it fit the bill. Like, you're already a notorious criminal. What's looking crazy gonna do, you know? And his fighting style was very interesting, you know, smashing things with blades. Didn't see that coming, and I really liked it. Sham, she was good. She wasn't like my favorite, but she was very good. I have nothing bad to say about her, you know? Mihawk was something phenomenal and something breathtaking. Once in a lifetime performance from this guy, I tell you. His casting, his role, like however they found that guy, they must have had him on the radar, or he must have known he would be a good Mihawk. I swear he's practiced the voice before actually being Mihawk, because that voice was perfect. And the way that he just gave off that I really am bored and I wish I had something better to do attitude really like spoke to me. I really enjoyed listening to him talk. I found myself rewinding the scenes of him talking just to hear his voice and the magnificent and all that kind of good stuff. Like, Mihawk did a really cool job. Like, he actually captured the essence of cool, you know? Sanji and Zoro and Luffy, they were cool. Nami and Usopp, they were awesome. They were not like cool in my opinion though. Like, I didn't think the things they did were like necessarily into the category of cool. Badass maybe, but like not cool. But Mihawk, everything he did felt just cool. He sat like, you know, the way he stood in front of Zoro and just pulled out the little knife and like lazily like flipped it out. And then when he stopped Zoro with it and flicked him back a couple times and then finally stabbed him, all of it was just cool. And I really had no complaints at all for Mihawk. His hat looked awesome. His sword looked awesome. His jacket might not have been as flashy as I wanted it to be, but, you know, apples to oranges. Also, when he fought Krieg, that kind of, you know, I didn't really do anything for me, but it didn't take away anything. I was happy to see Krieg, so, you know, that's good. And when he chopped the ship in half, that was great. I didn't think they would be doing things like that in the live action, but they are, and that's phenomenal. And it was all in all very fun, very solid action scene right there. And, you know, Krieg's gadgets, they looked really cool. Like I said, I wish we would have gotten a little bit more Krieg, but that's okay. And speaking of the villains further, I wish we would have gotten a little bit more Arlong. If you were going to introduce him earlier like you did, maybe introduce him even sooner than that. And I don't know why, I just wish we would have seen him terrorizing some people some more to really get the hate for him, because the actor was simply too good. Acting and saying those voice lines, and I really, really liked his, you know, beef with the humans. It was not unsubstantiated. Like, he had reasons. This man had a list of grievances, and at any point in time, he would not hesitate to let you know those grievances, you know? And he was really like a leader. He really felt like, hey, we're fishmen, we're tired of this shit, we're attacking now. Like, we're taking history back and controlling our own story. We're evil now, but that's not our fault, that's yours. And you really felt that hatred, that deep-seated, long-standing rivalry. Also, they brought up Jinbei. That was awesome. So my main nitpick with Arlong is just he should have had even more time, because he was pretty cool. You know, I really enjoyed that. His fight scene with Luffy at the Bratier was shockingly good. I was hating on it the second it started, and then the second it ended, I was like, oh man, that was actually a pretty good fight. I actually really enjoyed the way they did that. And I also enjoyed how they had Nami like, hey, he's a devil fruit user, just let the sea do this for you, you know? Because she knew someone would pull him out, and Arlong was a little too confident and too cocky. Let me get some closing thoughts out, because I've been talking for a while about the things I liked. So Garp and Kobe and Helmeppo, Bogard, all the Marines did great, and I want to make a video about them later on down the line. And I think Garp really, with his like half angry, half happy attitude towards Luffy, really captured what he should be feeling throughout the whole show, which is a love for Luffy but a hatred for pirates. And unfortunately, Luffy is a pirate. And longtime watchers of One Piece and readers of One Piece will understand how important this early plot point is going down the road, because some people might not have identified too well with Garp during Marineford, and now we get the chance to know Garp and grow with him as the show goes on. I enjoyed his teaching of Koby and Helmeppo, the way he took them under the wing. I also really enjoyed the throwing of the cannonball. I probably already said that, but I can't stress it enough. I truly, truly loved him just picking up the cannonball and throwing it. Very early in the series to get that moment, but that's completely fine. There's nothing wrong with that. That moment was something special to behold. And the last thing I want to talk about is the Going Merry as a whole. I really like the way the ship's design looks. I like how we didn't get a lot of time on the ship exploring it and whatnot, but when we were inside the Merry, you always knew it was the Merry. When Luffy was sitting on the masthead or the figurehead, I really felt 100% One Piece vibes. And I mean, the small little things of this show, the Gumu Gumu no Mi looking so good, the Gum Gum Fruit, and you know, Shanks and his crew, they all looked so good and acted so good. And they were a little corny, but you know, because they're so strong and you know they're strong now, it was good. And that little snippet we got at the very end of the show was hilarious, how they just laughed off Mihawk. You know, the same guy who just sliced up Zoro so hard that he was out for a couple episodes. And, you know, as a whole, I loved One Piece live action. It did exactly what it should do. It's brought new faces to the series, and it's pleased the old heads, the longtime fans of the series. I apologize if my last video was simply too negative, but there were things I genuinely didn't like. Honestly, I don't think the Easter eggs do as much for the show as people make them out to be, or the trailers originally intended them to look, and I think they actively took away from my enjoyment a lot of the time. However, the show is so good, and it was made with a lot of love and care, and you can tell that. And I might have been a little too harsh in my first video, but I do stand by a lot of the things I said, and maybe the only thing I would take back is what I said about Smoker. You know, going back and looking at him, he actually doesn't look that bad. And that's about it. I really liked the live action, guys. It was very good. If you haven't seen it and you're watching this video for some reason, go ahead and give it a watch. I promise it won't bite, unless you're a little too close to Arlong.